All right, welcome to the latest episode of Blood Money. Today we have a very special guest, Steve Stockman. How you doing, sir?
Fabulous. Great being here, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming on the Blood Money podcast. So, Steve, you're obviously not on camera here. We're trying to conceal your current identity, but you have freely spoken about who you are, where you come from, what you do. Do you mind taking us through all those facts, please?
Well, briefly, to go a little bit back and then come forward, I defeated the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in 1994 as part of the revolution, they call it, Newt Gingrich's revolution, when we took over the House for the first time in 40 years. And then I took care of my father who had dementia for 20 years. I came back and won in another interesting election. And so during both times, I served on the Whitewater Committee in 94 against the Clintons. And then which was investigating committee and the banking committee, subcommittee. And then I came back again and went after Obama, and also on national on TV, which I'll try to send you a clip of it. But we were on the Kelly Files and called for the arrest of Lois Lerner. And 2 weeks after that, I had Jack Smith, which is the same guy that's persecuting. Persecuting is a better word than prosecuting Trump, and he's doing the same thing he did to me. He's doing to Trump. And 2 weeks after I was on there, they came to my house, FBI agents, and were quite frankly, then they were like open about why they were there. They said, "You're going after our friends," and people forget hiring policy is what changed an organization, and they went from hiring credentialed criminal professionals, law enforcement, to politically hiring, what we call today affirmative action, all this kind of liberal, theology, like the one that I think one of the FBI agents they went after me and actually looked her up, and on her Facebook page, she was part of the Democrat Socialists of America.
I mean, it's like it's these political activists that they seem to be filling in all these unelected positions, really to wage essentially a war against their political opponents. It seems as though.
Yeah, in fact, I knew this to be absolutely true because I have a friend in New York who they thought he was a liberal because he's in New York, and they just assumed he was, and he's really a very smart guy. He helped go around the world setting up credit cards and stuff. Very smart guy. And the Obama administration came to him during that period in which Trump won until he's sworn in. They came to him and said, "Look, we're trying. This is so phenomenal." They said, "We're trying to put our people in before Obama leaves." So they filled all those positions with radical leftists. And that's why we have radical leftists in the justice system. We have radical leftists. I mean, if you listen to NPR, basically imagine NPR running everything in the government. That's exactly what you have.
That is so wild, man. That is so wild. So they came to you and they said, "We're trying to help our friends out here. That's why we're persecuting you." I mean, take us through that whole story. Tell us exactly what happened.
Well, I was at my apartment, and a lot of time I used to sleep out of my office. Then they pressured us to get an apartment, so I got an apartment, and they came to my door. Two FBI agents came to my door, knocked on the door, and I thought, "Man, this is strange. They're coming here like 6 o'clock in the morning, whoever it is." And I told them I couldn't answer the door. And then they said, "Oh, we're here. We got to give you something." I said, "Well, slip it on the door." And that's when they said, "Oh, we can't." And then she finally said, I said, "Who are you with?" That's when she said, "Oh, we're FBI." And then later on, they're talking. They said, "Well, we're here because your position is affecting our friends," or something like that. I can't. It's been so long now. So believe it or not, it's been 10 years ago. They kept us going for a long time. Hold on. Anyhow, so it was very frustrating, and we were sitting there, or I was sitting there, and I asked them to push the thing on the door, and they told me they had to hand it to me. That's when I knew it was a subpoena. and I said, and then she slid her card underneath the door, and it was her card actually, I couldn't believe this. Then she had her Facebook page up still. So, I mean, I looked her up on the internet and everything, trying to do some research on it. And there was her thing, I mean, including her marriage and everything. I was shocked. And it gave her background, and I was really shocked at her background. There was, as far as I could tell, she had no formal criminal training in terms of, law enforcement. And it was just, she was hired, was that DEI or whatever, that kind of hiring.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a whole system in which there's some very bad characters. And then from that point on, I had to hire attorneys and everything. So it's been a real tough time, and they subpoenaed everybody, every one of my friends and stuff. They do it. It's rules are radical. What they do is they identify you, and then what they do is they call it cutting you off. They try to isolate you from your friends, and then they, quote, kill you, figuratively, I assume. And so by subpoenaing all my friends, your friends get alienated and everything, and people get paranoid. You must be a criminal, I wouldn't be subpoenaed. But no, it's a tactic. And they did it with Trump, too. They were subpoenaing everybody. And they also subpoenaed, like, a car mechanic. It's like crazy what they did. They spent so much money. They spent 4 years, 4 grand juries. Mind you only need 1 grand jury if you're really guilty, right? You don't need 4. 4 grand juries and $22 million.
What were they? I mean, they spent $22 million on that investigation?
Yes, because, I didn't tell you everything I did. I also uncovered some pretty serious stuff they did. One of them was, I sent this out, a press release, thought it'd make national news, and I only made, Newsweek, I think it was, and WorldNet Daily. And one of the things is there's a group called the Haqqani Network, and Bo Bergdahl, I don't know if you remember him, but he was captured by the Taliban.
Mm-hmm.
And the Taliban then sold him or whatever to the Haqqani Network. And our government under Obama, this is the same thing, by the way, Biden's did. That's why, Obama's fingerprints all over this presidency. It's an identical thing he did. And so in order to get money to the Haqqani Network, they paid, which is illegal, they paid hundreds of millions of dollars to the Haqqani Network for this really corrupt U.S. soldier who walked off. He was deserted. 2 guys got killed trying to find him, trying to rescue him. And then the Obama officials end up giving Haqqani Network, which was back on the hills for being broke, but then after Obama did that, they had a lot of money. So we uncovered that. And we also called the first person to call for his impeachment, things like that. It kind of upset the Obamas quite a bit.
Wow. So, okay, do me a favor. I mean, I really need to understand your entire story, right? Tell me in a timeline fashion your entire story of, like, how you got elected to office, what you did while you're in office, including, did you do anything bad? Did you do anything that would warrant them investigating you? And if not so, describe to us the politics of everything that was involved in trying to take you down and how they did that.
Well, I don't think you let me go this long. I give a 90-minute speech, and it's actually like 2 hours. I mean, I started out in the 90s serving on the Whitewater Committee, and Clinton wrote a book and called me crazy and everything. And we went after, my office went after Hillary quite a bit. And so when I came back to Congress, there was quite a bit of animosity already there, because Hillary, when I got back, was Secretary of State.
Well, do you mind if I stop you and ask you a question there? Like, why were you going after...
No, I'm sorry. I apologize. You can stop me anytime. I didn't mean to marathon you. I apologize.
No worries. No worries at all. I just want to get clarity on the logic behind all that you did. So you said once you're elected into office, you started going after Hillary Clinton. Why did you go after Hillary Clinton? What was your reasons for doing so?
Well, you got to realize I was a kind of a conservative activist before I got elected. One thing that always ticked me off was you elect a congressman, he was out there campaigning. He goes, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It's kind of like our Speaker of the House, right? He talks real tough and he gets in and becomes a pussycat. So I said, you know what? I don't want to be that guy. I said, I want to be a guy that after getting elected, I'm going to stand up and fight for conservative values. And I fought for the Second Amendment real heavy. In fact, I invited Ted Nugent to the State of the Union, and it was amazing. He came and really dominated the news cycle that day and stepped all over the president's State of the Union speech. But so we took our I worked for the Leadership Institute where we did investigative journalism, and in fact one of my trainees was a lot of your listeners know. He does videos. Is James O'Keefe, and we had the guy that founded. We trained the guy that founded the Libertarian Organization. Some other really good people that we worked with end up succeeding. So between the 2 times I was in office, one of the things is I helped with the Leadership Institute, and we did investigations. So when I got in office, I started using the power of my office to do deep dives. And Daniel Rollbacker was a great American congressman from California that warned me. He said, Steve, you're going after Hillary, you're going to end up either dead or in prison. And when my wife came and talked to Dana, he goes, well, I warned Steve and you didn't listen. So basically, I wanted to be a congressman that everybody voted for and not just shrink away from, promise one thing and do another.
Which is kind of, I mean, the parallels I'm seeing here, right, is that you have somebody like a Donald Trump that had a similar attitude as opposed to, this kind of sea change that happens when people get elected into office, which they promise a whole bunch of things. And then once they get into office, they really do mostly none of the above. They give you a few tokens here and there, but most of the agenda that you voted for is not what happens. And it seems as though when people go against whatever secret agreements are made between somebody and all their promises and actually being in office, that's where people get into trouble. And another example is JFK. Donald Trump, JFK. You're talking the same talk. We've seen other individuals be punished, like I think about Kucinich, for example. I mean, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it is the case. In fact, Joe Barton from Enos, Texas, who was a congressman at that time, just point blank told me, he said, we don't know what controls you. We can't control you. And I said, the people that control me are my constituents. I go, I am not your constituent, and you're not, vice versa. I said, you need to leave me alone, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, in my mind.
You cut out for a second. You cut out for about 5 seconds. Do you mind repeating what you just said?
No, I don't mind it. I was told, Bargain from Enos, Texas, that he couldn't figure out who I was or who controlled me, and I told him, I'm not controlled by you, and you're not, and I'm not trying to control you. It's the people that control me are my constituents, and you didn't get me elected, my constituents did. So I always had grassroots, so I didn't know the powerful, I had the lowest dollar per vote. So my supporters, they gave me, like the average donation, I think, was $27. So we were always outspent, but I always was close to our grassroots, and they all came. We ran it out of the house. People came to the house and cooked and did everything. I picked up the garbage. I did everything that the volunteers did. And we had about 2,500 volunteers, and we didn't have any money for postage, so we delivered all the mail we had some postage, just instead of it. Most of the stuff, our literature, was delivered by hand to every door. It was pretty amazing.
Wow.
But
you said something about your cost per vote. Could you dive into that and kind of present what yours was and what something would be on average?
Well, like for instance, the first time I ran, I think Brooks spent $1.2 million. We spent $100,000. And that was in the 90s, so that's probably double now. That was probably, inflation, especially under Biden, would probably equivalent to $200,000. And then Again, in 20 years later, we were outspent. I can't remember the exact figures, but the New York Times said that we had the lowest dollar per vote. So what you take is the amount of money you spend and divide it by the number of votes you get, and that's how you get the dollar per vote. And we had the lowest in the nation. But that's because you got to figure them, each person that volunteers 1 hour at current rate, what's that, like $15 an hour or 20, depending on what state you're in. And if they're giving you 40 hours a week, you may be outspent, but in terms of volunteer hours, now when you have volunteers, you got to really respect them. And once you get elected, you can't turn around and stab them in the back and say, I'm not going to do what I promised to do. So I stuck to my word and didn't break it and paid for it. You know, in fact, like I said, Dana warned me ahead of time I need to stop. And I also had another congresswoman from California who told me that I was upsetting people. And you remember that, I'm trying to remember, it's the, what's his name, from New York, Schumer, said, you know, we have 6 ways on Sunday to screw you by the security apparatus. And he's not joking about that. And you have to, when you go to office, you have to consider that. And a lot of people were, I had one guy, the congressman, sit down next to me. He says, I support 100% what you're doing. He said, but my district, you know, I just can't do that. I can't do what you're doing. He goes, but I support what you're doing.
Why can't he do? Why couldn't he do what you're doing?
They're fearful. I mean, frankly, they you know, the guy replaced me. Said, you know, I love this job. I don't want to ever lose it. He was more worried about that than we got too many guys in there that love the job but don't want to lose it. You know, had I just kept my mouth shut and did what everybody else did and did nothing, I'd still be in there to this day. The charges against Trump, I mean, there's no way there's 90 felony charges against him, all orchestrated at the same time. It's so blatant what they're doing. And they did the same thing to me. They wanted to shut me up. They did the same thing when they stacked the deck. They blocked testimony. The judge put a gag order on me. It's so, actually, I'm kind of going through stress watching this because it's bringing back, you know, what I went through. And it's so similar in so many ways. It's like cookie cutter. Jack Smith, his wife is friends with Michelle Obama. This is all political. Mm-hmm. And they destroyed our system, our legal system.
By putting activist judges?
Not just activist judges, activist prosecutors, you know. Jack Smith's a prosecutor who, by the way, is not constitutionally appointed. I don't know why they don't challenge that, but he's never been approved by the Senate. He's not, shouldn't be even doing what he's doing.
Yeah. I mean, we did some work on the Canadian legal system and how badly it's corrupted with these individuals that are put into the courts, the federal courts, without any process that involves any oversight. It's basically the prime minister puts them there, and that's how Canada is really the prototype of how to turn your courts from justice courts into like literal just an extension of a party. And so it sounds like similar things are going on here. Where's the checks and balances to all of this?
Well, our founding fathers wanted checks and balances, and the founding father talked about what they created was only for a moral and ethical people. And when you have unethical and non-moral people, you're going to get what we got. And if you really look at our system, throwing your opponent in prison is exactly what they did in Russia, what Putin does in Russia, what China does, you know. Vietnam just sentenced one of the political opponents to death. You got all these different nations around the world. Congo, on a regular basis, throws their opponents in jail and silence the opposition. So we're becoming the same thing that we used to criticize. We became what we used to condemn.
Yeah. I mean, we're doing, not to jump around here because I really want to hear the details of all that happened. I mean, how you're essentially, it sounds like a political persecution. I want to understand also, what were the charges? You know, with Trump, we see, the hush money and all this nonsense. With you, what was it that they're saying you did?
Well, it's a little bit esoteric in terms of what it is. I don't know how much you want to go into it, but I mean, you got to realize all this is spanning over now. It's been 11 years. So to tell you in 30 minutes what happens, kind of like saying, give me history of the world in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
They start out with just one FEC charge. By the way, the FEC, in my case, never said I did anything wrong, which is very similar to the current trial with Trump right now. They're taking FEC, which is a federal body, and they flipped it into a state charge, which is bizarre, and which they shouldn't be allowed to do. And they're twisting it. They always use two things. Anytime they want to counter you, there's a great book called 3 Felonies a Day. It documents how everybody in the United States commits 3 felonies because there's so many laws. I mean, under Reagan, there was like 3,000 federal laws, and now we have over 300,000 laws. So everybody breaks and commits a felony. And the definition of fraud is determined not by you and your organization. It's determined by the government. So if anybody has a nonprofit, including churches, if someone gives you a donation and the person's happy they gave the donation and you spent it the way the donor wanted, the government can come in and say, no, you committed fraud because we read this and we think you didn't do what we think you should have done. That's exactly what they did with me. And once they get one crime, which is what they did to Trump, then they call it stacking. So they say, oh, you committed fraud. So you take a check from a church or whatever. Okay, you got a fraudulent donation. Now you're doing money laundering, wire fraud, and that's how they stack the charges. That's how they went from, like one charge to 96 or whatever. It's called stacking. It's just like building a house. They keep putting stuff on top, and that's what they did with me. First I had 2 charges, and they all went up to 27 charges. And so a jury who doesn't understand federal election law or internal revenue law, they're mom and pop on the jury, and the government's sitting there going, "Oh, he broke the law." But in reality, we never broke the law. We had attorneys checking what we did, and we followed the law. But the jury doesn't know that. And there's also another book out about jury, how bad juries now are ill-informed. I mean, if you look at if you interview some of these people demonstrating, they don't even know what they're saying or where Palestine is. I mean, they're clueless. So you have a lot of people that are not well aware of what the law is, and when the laws get that complicated, it's just a real challenge to defend yourself. Plus, you got to be super rich. There's a great thing I should send you from John Stossel. Mm-hmm. He covers the book by Sidney Powell, License to Lie. And Sidney Powell was a federal prosecutor here in Texas. And she covered, then she went on as a defense attorney and covered how often the DOJ just absolutely lies. In fact, the one case regarding the governor of Virginia, McDonald, it went to the Supreme Court, and there's 9-0 verdict that Jack Smith created a crime, convicted of him, and it's not even on the books. The Supreme Court says you can't convict somebody on a crime that's not even on the books. And that's why they threw out the case.
Wow.
But it went all the way to the Supreme Court. So we have it's very much like the socialist, Russia. In fact, the guy who was a key witness in my race he said, I have the grievous guilt, or something. I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember how he said it, but he goes, I helped convict an innocent man. He said Joseph Stalin would be proud of what they did in the Stockman case.
Wow. Wow. How many years in jail did you end up doing?
Well, it was first, I got to give you the context. It was, I think, 27. It was a lot of charges. I think it was 27. I can't remember. I got convicted 26. And so that was for 283 years. And I always joke, I tell everybody, I'm only going to do half of that. But then the judge ended up sending me 10 years in prison for something that is so ridiculous. An FEC charge, federal election charge, basically. And they stacked the deck on that. And then, so I'm in prison, and then my wife was excellent at working and carrying my case. 95% of the people that go to prison, they get divorced, and it's kind of sad. People leave, and I met a lot of people that were innocent. There's a guy in there now called John Woods, mm-hmm. and I wish your listeners would write to him. He's a state senator from Arkansas, and his crime was that he endorsed Trump in the state in which Hillary was from.
Oh, wow,
And
wow.
she sicked the DOJ on him. He got money for a Christian school, and they turned that into a crime of bribery or something like that. It was ridiculous. But listen to this. The FBI admitted he destroyed evidence to convict John. So you would think, hey, the FBI admitted he tampered with, the evidence to convict him. He admitted that. He also, the FBI perjured himself, not once, but twice. Paid cash to delete his computer software. It was demanded to be turned over. And you know what the FBI agent got? He got like 90 days or a year or something like that on probation. And John is still in prison after they admitted they falsely convicted him.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
He's in Bastrop. If you look him up, his name, you can write to Bastrop prison, and he got 18 years. I got 10. He got 18.
Wow.
I really wish Trump would have pardoned him because his case is, my case is bad, but his is unbelievably bad.
So Trump pardoned you, right?
No, he commuted my sentence, and people want to know the difference.
Okay.
Pardon means I get my gun rights back, my voting rights back, and it's like it never happened. It means I got a pardon. Commute means I just don't do the physical prison time. I still was on probation for 3 years. I was under the government thumb, and I couldn't talk like I am now with you. And that happened. I finished that probation, 3-year probation, December 22nd of last year. So I've only been off about 4 months. So I really do interviews, but you were so gracious to me and so kind. I'm doing it with you, and I appreciate what you're doing to defend our nation.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate you, coming and talking about this. So, I mean, this sounds like the political persecutions we've been seeing more currently, like in our mass media, but really, like how long ago was this? This was about 12 years ago.
Yeah, it was 11 years. Yeah, it was. Some people said I was the tip of the spear. I was one of the first guys to get persecuted, but it was oddly at the end of our trial. By the way, the prosecutor who took over from Jack Smith and everything, he's super corrupt himself, very close with Obama. And Bob Barr put him in charge. There's an article in Gateway Pundit about this guy. Bob Barr put him in charge of voter fraud. That would be like putting one of the, a robbers gang in charge of bank robberies. I mean,
Yeah.
Just the wrong person to put in there. But all this happened many years ago, and people, when it first happened to me, thought, "Oh, you're guilty" and all that, and then now they're going, "Oh, wow, you really were set up." Especially once they hear the whole. I gave like a 90-minute presentation. Once they hear it all, people come up and are very gracious to me, and they did some other things when I was in prison. Like they try to give me. I'm a diabetic, and they try to give me a large dose of fast-acting insulin, which would have cut short my life.
You're what?
They try to give me a large dose of quick-acting insulin, which would have cut short my life.
Wow.
But I told them it's unusual because normally when they gave me insulin, they would stand in front of me and I'd watch them fill the syringe, right? Well, I went out there one time, and I got a witness to this, by the way, and he was standing behind me. He said, "Damn, Stockman," he said, "they really are trying to kill you." They set aside a syringe with my name on it. I said, "I'm not taking anything that I don't know with my name on it." And the nurse said, "I wouldn't either." She squirted it in the air. So,
wow.
They don't fight the way we do.
I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy because, like, you're talking about, like, murder, putting you in jail. We're seeing what's happened with the J6 people. And the censorship on that is really crazy because, look, like, trying to think about this in the most objective way possible. Yes, there was people on January 6th that deserve to be in jail, right? There's a lot of people in jail right now that don't deserve to be in there. You know what I mean? That were there, like they weren't talking about violence, they weren't doing violence, and that's a
It's like
large
grandmas.
majority.
I mean, they're also arresting grandma who's praying in front of an abortion clinic, throwing her in jail. And in the meantime, right before Congress, you got the head of the FBI saying, "Oh, well, we got all these Chinese spies. This is the worst time, and we need more money." And then they take that money, instead of using it on Chinese spies, they go ahead and spy on us. It's just an abuse of power, and Republicans keep falling for it. It's almost like Charlie Brown with the football, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They say, "Oh, we need more money." And every time they get more money, they spend it on working to attack us, as American citizens.
Yeah. By
the way, the same thing they're charging the J stickers for. I was on a banking committee one time, and it was over, I can't remember what the bill was or whatever, and we had Code Pink and Nation of Islam and all that interrupting our meetings. No one ever got charged. I mean, the double standard is so blatant. I mean, they were throwing stuff all around and disrupting the meetings.
And this, this issue right now, sorry to interrupt you, really, like, no. Now you have like this, something like 30 million like individuals that came illegally, that they're, giving them all sorts of rights, including the right to vote and register to vote. I mean, it's crazy. It's like what's happening in front of your eyes is pretty much the country is being stolen by this cabal, more or less.
Yeah, it is a cabal, and I think at the head of it is Obama, and but they believe what's called Klaus Piven. They're doing if you read their stuff, they're doing exactly what they're advocating. They're trying to overload the system. They're trying to make the country bankrupt, which I think they succeeded. We're every 90 days we have $1 trillion in new debt. And it is outlined in their goals, and they're succeeding in so many ways. The Marxists continually use and have used immigration as a weapon to undermine the country. Mm-hmm. In fact, honestly, it was the socialists out of Germany that sent people that supported Marx into Russia to help overthrow in 1917 the Russian Tsar. Mm-hmm. So that's not unusual what they're doing. Yeah, but it's pretty alarming. You're watching the United States lose what we thought we could never lose.
So tell me more about how they came after you, the political persecutions. Give me a timeline, and I know it's a lot of information, but try to give me some highlights on when it started and all the way up to you getting out of jail most recently.
Well, like I said, I went after him in the 90s, and Jim Leach was my chairman at that time, a guy from Iowa who then became a Democrat. And the Clintons were upset with my going after them for that. And then when I came back, I picked up where I left off and started pursuing corruption. And from that point on, we were in live porns, and they just pursued me, subpoenaed stuff. I mean, it went on for 4 years, and they spent $22 million. So it was pretty stressful. I mean, I don't have the capacity in terms of bandwidth and money that Trump has, So if anybody ever filled my shoes, you would know the stress level for that many years is extremely high. And, they just did horrible things. Intimidating witnesses, threatening witnesses, telling witnesses they're going to go to prison for 40 years, which is a blatant lie. People don't realize that it's legal for the FBI to lie to you. It's not like, it's a crime for them to lie to you. Mm-hmm. They can do it. They went to court, and they won the court case. So it's just a real stressful, situation, and it just never lets up. They always, coming after you, and they take you, burn through your funds, and it's just. I'm not rich. I mean, my house is like 1,400 square feet.
Was there awareness, like in terms of our other party members, support from other party members? I mean, did people kind of come to your aid?
No. Not Republicans. No. They run. They run. They don't want to be part of it. You're a leopard.
Wow.
And then, like my good friend Dana told me, he said, you better back off, In fact, I think part of the reasons they went after me was to make a demonstration out of me, to kind of show other Republicans, you do this, and we're going to do this to you too. And remember, keep in context, Schumer's the one that says we have 6 ways that Sunday to screw you, the established security apparatus, which is, he's referencing the DOJ, RS, and people forget Lois Lerner, who really went after conservatives in a blatant way, is still involved to this day. I think she's retired supposedly, but you can see her fingerprints and her handiwork on some of the other stuff, including some of the Trump cases. By the way, at the end of my case, I thought was something really interesting, is one of the prosecutors said, hey, we can use this stuff against Trump.
No way.
And I tried to warn him about this, and that's true. They followed me around the world. I even was in Egypt one time, and they had the CIA there. The Egyptian told me that. He told me what was going on. And I told my lawyer, I said, hey, I think they're following me and doing all this stuff. My lawyer goes, nah, you're not that important. No. And then when they turned it over, everything I said was true,
Wow.
They turned over some documents, so.
Wow, man. So, tell me more. Tell me what other dirty tricks were they playing in trying to...
There's a lot. I mean, I got it here. I'm actually going to a Lincoln Day dinner here in a little bit. So tell me how you want to, what is the most important thing to you I can tell you about. And then,
tell us some of the similarities in terms of tactics that they're currently using against Trump. The reason why this is such an interesting topic is one of the topics we cover a lot on our podcast is, what happens in family courts and what's been going on for the last 30-something years. And when I see what's happening with Trump, I'm like, okay, they're doing the exact same unlawful, unconstitutional stuff, including fabricating, false evidence and that sort of thing. So I see kind of like a lineage of corruption, and we're hitting this kind of climax right now. And I'd love to hear about how your case has a lot of those hallmarks in terms of tactics. Obviously, individuals, you got some of the same names going after you as that are going after Trump. So yeah, tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, then I got to head out. And then we can maybe do this another time. Pick up if you want. But one of the things that was really eerie is every day I listen to what they're doing, and they open up Trump's case with basically smearing him. It has nothing to do with the actual charges, and they keep talking about stuff that's not even on the paper. And they did that to me. They went on about, because I was the first one to introduce a cryptocurrency bill, and the first congressman to ever take cryptocurrency. And so they're bringing up cryptocurrency. And I said, what it has nothing to do with FEC law. But they threw it in there because they knew the jury's like, oh, cryptocurrency, that's only used for, that's the kind of mentality they had during my trial. They always like, that's only used for drugs or whatever. They throw in everything in the kitchen sink. And then when you bring in somebody you want to testify that says, that invalidates that and says, no, he did this and this, the prosecution objection says, no, that's just a character witness. We can't talk about that. I thought you've been smearing my character through the whole thing. It had nothing to do with the case. They're doing that with Trump. They're trying to smear him. But Trump, God bless him, man, he comes out. Oh, by the way, I had a gag order. And Trump is technically violating the gag order, which I love. Mm-hmm. They're not going to throw him in jail because if they do, he'll win by a landslide. So he gets out there and violates. But I had a gag order, too. I also had witnesses that were not allowed to testify. It's just on and on and on. It's duplicative in so many ways. In fact, it's actually, I actually get stressed out listening to it because it's bringing back flashbacks of what happened to me.
Wow, man. Well, I know you have to go, Steve, but this is like really, really fascinating information. Thank you for having the courage to speak out about all of this, especially after what they've done to you. But I mean, if anything, you're a testament to like our thirst for freedom to escape any sort of elite slavery is so strong that even, it's like that Nelson Mandela thing. It's not like throwing him in jail stopped him from talking about what was his moral characteristics.
Yeah, well, remember, it was Herman Goering who stated that only the way to control the masses is to make them fearful.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at the top of my X account or Twitter account, whatever, it says the most dangerous thing is not to be fearful. And one guy told me, he said, Steve, I don't think you have a frontal lobe, which is, where the fear is. Because you don't have a frontal lobe. So if you become fearful, you become controllable.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to stand up to this. And I wish your listeners, now, please, this doesn't mean to be violent. This just means to get involved and stop this stuff and fight it.
Yeah.
And on a granular level, it's shocking how much the DOJ is willing to go after just the average citizen. I talked to a sweet woman who just tried to start a nonprofit that would stop these books from being put in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
And which they call banned books. The books aren't banned. It's like saying, because alcohol's not served to kindergartners, alcohol's banned or something like that. It's illogical. But anyhow, so if your listeners are there, you guys need to stick together, and I would recommend getting together and working to defeat this. What we have is really horrible, but we need to fight. But thank you for having me on, and thank you for letting me have this opportunity to share with you. And if there's anything you need in the future, let me know.
Yeah, would love to have you back on here, Steve. And just a quick outro. Thank you, viewers, for joining us for this episode of Blood Money. Make sure you go to americahappens.com, insert your email address so you could stay subscribed to the America Happens Network. I will see you all on the next episode of Blood Money. Take care.